Well, hello, and welcome to Unitegrity. So, what is Unitegrity? What is Unitegrity all about? Well, it's really about four things: transparency, privacy, equality, and trust. All right, that sounds like awesome stuff. So, what are we really actually talking about here? Are you sick and tired of the things that companies are doing to make your products that you don't even know about? I mean, they're back there, they're making stuff. You don't know what's in the stuff you're putting in your bodies. It's just getting done. You're buying it, you're eating it, you're smoking it, you're drinking it, you're slurping it all up, however you take it. And you don't really know what's in there. So, I mean, in the past, this was completely acceptable. We just lived with the fact that we didn't really get to know what was in our products. I mean, it was difficult for if you imagine how complicated if they were going to take a picture of every time in the process, I mean, then they had to get the film developed and all that, and everything was be crazy, right? Well, this day and age, I mean, digital recording is it's so cheap. Storage is cheap. There's no reason why we can't have a snapshot video and tracking of basically everything that happens to every single product that we put into our bodies. So, I mean, as consumers, we need to start to demand transparency. So, Unitegrity is about bringing forward some tools for us to actually be able to create that transparency in the market and make it available. So, I mean, as consumers, we need to start to demand Unitegrity. We need to say, hey, I want to see if I'm going to put it in my body, I want you as a company to show me what you did to make it. What was involved, who was involved, what animals were involved, what plants were involved, what chemicals were involved, what processes and machines were involved in making the products that I'm going to put in my body. And, I want to, as a consumer, make decisions about what's in there so that I can, feel pretty good about it. I mean, we're paying high prices for products. So why not create some transparency in that process? So the second thing that really disturbs me and is a tenet of Unitegrity is privacy. So companies are just collecting data on us all they want. I mean, we're like data farms to them. They're harvesting our personal information, they're turning around and they're selling it. And they're selling it for a profit. I mean, 25 cents a time, like every time, and becomes included in the price of every product that you buy is buying, some sort of representation of your own personal data to sell it to yourself. And it's a bit ridiculous. And we don't really know where that data is. We don't know who has it. We don't know who's controlling it. We have no transparency into the data around ourselves. And we have very little privacy. I mean, they're making these profiles with 5,000 points of data on us. And we don't really know who's using it or how it's working. So there are some ways with new developments of technology that we can start to take back ownership of our own personal data, and we can not rely on these third parties. We don't have to let them track everything we do. There's better ways available. And decentralized stores of truth seem to be a major part of that. And so, I've gotten interested in, well, wait a minute, what are these other structures? If I don't have to store all my information at Facebook servers or at, Yelp's servers or at my local liquor store's database servers of where every time I buy which beers. I don't need to necessarily, they don't all have to have a track of my records. Even Safeway, or the grocery stores or whatever, don't need to have, a record of every, thing that I've purchased. It's possible for me to anonymize myself as a consumer and actually have a record of my own consumption habits and my own products that I bought, but not necessarily have to, disclose who I am to these companies. And so they can have, I mean, having anonymized profiles of ourselves can be quite useful. It can be useful for the market. It can create efficiency in the market, and it can make it easier for companies to sell you what you want, and for you to not have to waste a bunch of your time wading through crap that you don't want. So I mean, there's benefit, but the problem is that there's an imbalance of basically knowledge. So certain companies have a much better knowledge of what's going on in the market than everybody else does. So then they have a huge competitive advantage in a bunch of different places. So we need to break open some of these silos of knowledge, and we need to use our own. We need to collect our own little tiny silo of personal data. We need to say, hey, I'm responsible for my own personal data. I collect it. I keep it secure. I keep it anonymized and protected. I'm there are now tools for me to start to make these choices as a person and a consumer and a human. And so I'm going to create my own personal bubble that I understand what I'm doing with. And that's going to take some learning. We need these tools to develop, and as we develop, and we need to learn how they work, and we have to start to be responsible in these ecosystems as they start to come up, and as these decentralized stores of truth, start to arise. And an example of decentralized store of truth is Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano, one of these networks, EOS, maybe. I don't know. Some of these decentralized, Hyperledger is an interesting topic of, a decentralized ledger. And so there's different levels of ownership and privacy and things like that in the way that these networks can be structured. But the idea is that we can start to create cryptographically secure collections of our own data, and then we can be in control of where they are and what ecosystems that they even exist in, and we can transfer them between different ecosystems and keep records and archives of them of ourselves and stuff. And we no longer have to we're transitioning into a time where we no longer have to rely on these other third party companies to create these data silos of ourselves. We can have our own data silo, and then if we choose as consumers to use aggregates of those data to show things like credit or show loyalty to certain brands or to establish patterns of behavior or whatever, we can actually create secure proofs of our own personal activity, and then we can share those secure proofs with other companies, and say, hey, look, I can show you that I bought your product 45 times, so like you should totally give me a discount, or invite me to the special party that you're having because I'm a loyal customer. And all these kinds of different interesting things can arise if you can have a secure system. But right now, it's tough to do that because you're relying on all these like weird third parties of having their systems talk to their other systems, and and the consumer doesn't know who has what data, what profiles. I've got 47 email logins, this system and that system, and they have a user profile and some sort of cloud computing system that I completely don't understand. I don't know what's going on. It seems goofy, and they didn't call it the cloud for nothing. They wanted you to not understand what was going on. And so as we get into a new paradigm of where our data is stored, we start looking at decentralized stores of truth, and we look at networks like Ethereum, or even some of the ways that Bitcoin is being leveraged, and certainly the way that even third generation decentralized networks like Cardano are being built with these kind of ideas in mind. And that we have a future where there's decentralized logic where you can interact with a function that exists publicly, and we can create deals between each other, and we can have all sorts of interesting ways of creating our own tracking, creating our own tokens, our own non-fungible tokens, our own representations of our own activity, these kinds of things. And then we can have our own collection of it, but we can keep it in a way that it maintains is decentralized. And so this is really the early days, the early frontiers of that. But it's going to we're moving into that. So if you're ready, now's the time to start experimenting with it, and get yourself some test money and start playing with these decentralized systems. So that's what Unitegrity is all about, is starting to build some of these tools so that you can learn how it works. So as we basically grow this, as we get transparency from the producers that are showing us clearly like what are they doing to our products. And then we get, we have our own data privacy. We take back our own, ownership of our data. We end up with a much more equal world. And, it seems like a lot of the problems that we struggle in this planet right now come from there just not being equality in the production chain, The person in a third world country who's doing a lot of the work and giving up a lot of the resources for the products that we consume are receiving sometimes the least amount of the money or the least amount of the reward out of the end, and it's just not equal. We don't really, since we don't have transparency all the way back, and we don't know who did it or what happened, We just as consumers accept whatever the slices of the pie are, the slices of the pie, and whoever gets it is whoever getting it. But I think as humans that and intellectual beings with computing, decentralized stores of truth, and just being savvy humans and being aware of what we're doing now, what we're capable of, and what we have at our hands, like we can realize there's a much better way to do this, and that we don't need there to be this huge imbalance where just few people have full control of the market and nobody gets to know what they were up to, and that everybody's kind of creating a shield. Every layer is just another layer of the onion where there's more and more secrets. And the secrets, they claim them that they're required for, IP protection and all this, but really, when we look at the interwoven fabric of our humanity now, like so many people are involved in every single thing you do, that it doesn't really seem fair that there's some schmo invented some bright idea and then they get to make all the money on the whole deal. It just doesn't seem fair. And so we need equality, and we need some fresh tools to create that equality. And one of the best ways is just demanding transparency. And then if we take back our data and we have transparency, then equality arises as a result of that. But the best part about that, and the reason why even the producers really want to do this, is we really do want trust. I mean, trust is what we're after in the market. And, I want to keep going back to the same brands, and I want those brands to produce something that's going to make my life enjoyable. I want to create health in myself. I want to create energy in myself. I want to understand what's going on, and I want to be a part of the world economy. I want to make choices. I want certain people to be rewarded for my decisions, and I want to know that if I buy this product, that this person that I like gets rewarded for doing that because they do a really good job, and I want to see them doing that good job, and I want to share in the reward of their progress. And even if they live in some country on the opposite side of the earth, I want to still be able to know who they are, be aware of their contribution to the things that went into my body, and I want to even potentially thank them. And if I feel like their contribution was greater even perhaps than the sum of the other parts, I want to give them an extra reward. If I feel like the person who advertised to me did not deserve as big a piece of the pie as the person who dug the metal out of the earth, for example, or that, hammered away and made that thing, whatever planet, whatever country they lived in, whatever island they're on, whatever mountain they find themselves on, I don't really care. This is the earth, and we're all earth beings, and we all live together in a global community, and we have global earth resources that we all need to share. And a lot of junk gets made and then it gets sent to places that nobody wants, and somebody wanted to make it, but they never had any, they didn't have a clear communication channel of how this whole thing went. So then we just have this nasty breakdown of trust all the time. Like nobody trusts anybody because there's no transparency and we're frustrated. So if we can open up transparency, it benefits everybody. Since we have the tools now, it's time for us to start doing this. There's no excuses anymore. Like as consumers, we need to say, I want Unitegrity. I want it now. So we're building out this process. We're a nice little team of people that are just interested in creating a new idea. And what we've done is create a simple client. It's just a tool here that you can use to start to interact with the Ethereum blockchain and start to understand how this could work. And we're going to be plugging in, the front end and the back ends and making this a more useful tool as we move forward. But basically, there's no excuse these days other than to just get in and start building it, start playing with it, start testing it, start understanding it. It's all available for us now, and we can just get going on it. So I recommend you get over to the Rinkeby faucet or whatever. We're using Rinkeby testnet right now. So head over to the Rinkeby faucet. We may use some of the other testnets, but it's great because Ethereum is like this universe where it's like you can go to the test bank and get some test money, and you can go spend some test money and see how you do with a test account. And it is actually real stuff. It actually works. And so that's a new paradigm that I think as people we need to get comfortable with. And we can go use the testnet for a little bit, mess up with our private keys on the testnet, lose everything, like get some free money and lose it because we forgot our private keys, and then realize, man, it'd sure be cool if I had like a hard piece of hardware or something, and just go through that process of understanding Where's my accounts? You know, MetaMask, what's that? And Portis wallet, what's that? And how do I get these things and get them going? And you just use some free test money and play with it. So that's available right now. All of our contracts are just played on the Rinkeby testnet, so that you can just get in there and experiment. You know, see what it's about and have a go. All right. So what is this Unitegrity, anyways, and how did we get here? Well, a dear friend of mine started up a brewery, and the notion of the brewery was to brew with Brewtegrity. Now, there are things that are happening in the brewery process that are a little shady, let's say. I mean, they're using chemicals that you just don't know about. Now, whether they're good for you or bad for you is a huge debate, but they're not being disclosed. And they're supposedly rinsing them out or filtering them out, but then they're just not disclosing it. And then, you know, you'd think you're drinking beer that's made out of hops and, you know, some sort of grain and, you know, some water, and then it's got some yeast in there, but then actually they're using some other agents, and you're just not sure. So a dear friend of mine opened up a brewery with a, you know, in Germany they handle this with a Reinheitsgebot, which is like the German purity law, and I probably said the name incorrectly, but the idea is that you only use those 4 ingredients in your beer, and you're not using anything else. Well, in the United States, in our beer production, we've slid on that. And the reason why is because when you're brewing a kettle of beer, that at the top there's a bit of foam, and you want to add something that gives you that little boost. And that 10% is actually the profit margin on a brewery, so you kind of really need that extra 10% out of your kettle. So the chemical guy comes around and says, hey, just add a few drops of this stuff to your beer, or, you know, pour some of this in there, and basically, you know, you'll get that extra yield out of your beer. Well, we don't know the downstream effects of these chemicals in our beer, and maybe it's nothing, maybe it's really a big deal. I mean, there's people that debate that probably cause you gut issues, and that people, you know, I mean, people are worried about all sorts of different, you know, problems with gluten problems and, you know, all that. So who knows what, you know, we want to understand, and we just need transparency there. Like, why don't the breweries talk about this? Why don't they say, if they're not doing it, then awesome. If they are doing it, then awesome. Either way, if everything's fine, it should all be above board. But what we don't have is transparency in that process. So what we want to do, you know, this is kind of where Unitegrity originally came from, was the idea of Brewtegrity. Like going, you know, demanding from our breweries that we know what is in our beer. And so we hope, you know, to bring online some breweries that will have Brewtegrity, and so they'll start to be transparent about what's in their process. What did they do when they made your beer? And that's already a huge part of the craft world of brewery. We want it, you know, you go back and get a brewery tour. They show you how they make the beer. There's not a lot of huge secrets, you know. I mean, the brewmaster doesn't have to give up his secret sauce, but you know, we can know what it is that's going on into our products, right? And so, and they will be really glad to show us that if we just give them an avenue to show, you know, so what that's all about. So, you know, that leads us also to Weedtegrity. Like, you know, if we're gonna have transparency in our beer, then we might as well have it in our weed. And, you know, the weed business is already creating a lot of transparency. They're using like the metric system to track from seed to sale. The governments are mandating that they track this. So they're already doing the work of collecting all the data. And if you look at the packaging of weed that you get, it shows on there like quite a bit of information. But it doesn't really go into detail, and it's kind of this cheesy label, and they end up making the ingredients, because the ingredients end up being this huge block of text, and so they make it really, really tiny fonts so that you don't really read it, because you don't really want to know that they're putting all these weird chemicals on your pot, in your pot, around it, and using pesticides and all these sort of different processes. And then you also have no transparency into the amount of electricity that they're using to generate your pot. And then there's just a lot of things that, you know, you don't really know what's going on, but that they're kind of showing us, but they're not doing a great job. But, you know, as consumers of marijuana, like, you know, we need to start to demand, if you're going to smoke that stuff, I mean, people are dying from vaping because they don't know what's going on, and there's no tracking, and it's really unclear. So we as consumers need to demand that we know what's going on. We need to know, you know, what energy sources, what water sources, who handled it, how was it stored, was there, you know, where was it stored, all these kinds of information. And if we're going to pay $50 for an eighth of, you know, marijuana, then we darn tootin' they ought to spend the time and effort to show us a pretty darn clear pathway from when that thing was a little tiny seed all the way to where we can purchase it And there's no reason, there's no secrets in the pot world. Weed is called weed because it's easy to grow. And so there, the real differentiators are going to be the ones that grow it cleanly, grow it, or that are super transparent about the genetics, about the testing, about the process, about the people, about the equality in the process. We as consumers should be demanding that from our marijuana production business. And if this is medicine, then show us. Just show us. There's no reason, there's no excuse for us to not be shown. So that's what Weed Integrity is all about. So we have some interested people that want to work on this idea of creating that transparency. It's the data is being collected, and now we just glue that together with a bit of Unitegrity and give people an opportunity to see that data. We've already been doing it in the wine business for a long time. I mean, a sommelier can sniff a wine and immediately tell you, what hill it was grown on and which season and all that. So transparency in wine has been a huge part of it drives the value of wine. I mean, we really have looked at that for a long time. So this isn't something crazy for consumers. I mean, we always, if you're going to pay $250 for a bottle of wine, you want the story. I mean, you want to know everything about the family that grew it and the hill it was grown on and all that. So, so wine is already naturally has that. Now you stamp on it some proofs so that you can actually ensure that the story that's being told was true. And, there's no fake wine anymore. There's, you actually can track that wine all the way from when it was, grown all the way to you having that bottle. And that data could be persistent and last for, as long as the wine could live. So, and then obviously with distilleries, I mean, just a natural extension. If you're going to, drink, there's complex bourgeois booze being drunk. And we want to know all the story about the special herbs that went to making it the flavor and the barrels that went into it and all of these different aspects of all the things that went into our distillation process. So again, this is a natural translation, and we just need to demand as consumers that our products have Unitegrity and that they show us, that they disclose, that they give us this level of transparency. And so what we've created is just a set of tools that will allow us to do that. This is a first generation of idea, and Unitegrity is a growing process, and hopefully as we gain adoption and people start to understand how this works and they realize the value of it, this is a decentralized idea. We want people to share our smart contracts and open this up so that it becomes a way that people demand consumption transparency in the world. And these smart contracts are easily, adopted by other people. We want to share it across different industries. I mean, we can imagine Unitegrity going to gun integrity and home integrity and all sorts of other amazing integrities, because it doesn't just limit with these, but we're focusing on creating this transparency on products that we particularly, are a bit dangerous, that we're consuming as humans and we're putting into our bodies. And they have a tendency to be poisonous by their nature. And so you're always riding this sort of fine edge when you're consuming these products. So I think that, we pay a pretty penny to demand, the reason why you drink certain brands isn't just because the label it's on there. It's because you think that there's some high quality production value that's going on in it. So how about if when you pick up your bottle or you pick up your, product label, you should have a barcode that scans on there. And when you scan that, it should allow you, if you hit scan Unitegrity, my camera's already in use, so it's not going to allow you to show it here. But basically, a camera comes up, you scan this with your phone, and you can basically, grab that QR code and bring it into Unitegrity. So, what we have a test scan. So I'm going to pump that in right now, and you guys are welcome to test this out. Because if you don't have an actual Unitegrity label in hand that you can scan, then you can just test this out. So you hit the test scan, and that pretends like you just scanned a smart contract address. Now, this is a smart contract address that's located on the Ethereum blockchain. So now I, as a consumer, am going to go interact with the decentralized store of truth. I'm going to go ask this decentralized store of truth for some verified set of data, because I bought a product and apparently this product has Unitegrity, and that means that they want to show me what's going on. So I scan that address and I get a valid address and I see the results. Now, what you'll end up with is a Unitegrity token. Now, so this data is coming off of the Ethereum blockchain, and it is, you're seeing a verification message that this actually was found. That's the batch address here, and this is the Unitegrity token factory address. So this is a legitimate address on the Ethereum blockchain, and it brought information back. Now, as we develop Unitegrity, this is where the producers would be displaying to you product information. So imagine, and as we get to develop, a YouTube video will show you about the production process, or images and different particular metadata will come through. And this is where you would display the product info for what you found. And that comes from a verified smart contract on the blockchain. So the producer is claiming that this is true. They've created a smart contract, and they want this to be verified that really is part of the production process. And so it's up to the producers to be as transparent as possible and to share as much data as information as possible. But and it's up to us as consumers to demand more and more of that. So we are going to be allowing that as a gateway here, and so we'll be helping the producers to collect that metadata and to share it. One way that we're working on that is through the Metric RC program, where you can grab that metadata and then have it verified, and then verify that data and put it here, and then have the producers share the information with us. So that'll be rolling out as we roll into the future, and you'll see more demos of what it looks like when a product info is displayed here. But just imagine that it's here. For right now, it's just this white, beautiful, empty area, and we are looking to fill that up with actual products. So in the world of Ethereum, you have to have your own Ethereum address. And there's two ways that you can actually grab them easily with Unitegrity. And there are many, many, many other ways. If you already know what you're doing, you'll know what you could also do. But the easy ways are, you can use MetaMask if you're on an actual Chrome browser. And so you just go download MetaMask. It's a Chrome extension. It was created by ConsenSys. It's highly integrated with Ethereum. It's trustworthy. It works well, and it's a great wallet for you to basically get started on the Ethereum network. You can start up on the Rinkeby test network. You can go, as I said, and go to a Rinkeby faucet, and you can give yourself some free money. So right now I have 1.983 pretend Rinkeby ETH that I got. And it's controlled by social networks. So what they make you do is make a social media post, and then they send you money. And that way you can't, just get unlimited funds, and there's some sort of a restriction on it. But you get some test money that you can play with, and they have a control. So I have an account here that's set up on MetaMask. It's on the Rinkeby test network, and it has some amount of practice ETH in it. And now I could start to participate with the Ethereum network. And it's not actually required as a consumer for me to see this metadata, because if I just scanned it, I would still be able to see this information without having any address. But if I would really like to start to interact with it, and I want to start to create some sort of metadata of my own, and to create a private record of my consumption habits, then now I'm given the opportunity to bring in my own Ethereum address, mint a token, and view my own tokens. So the first step is to grab my Ethereum address. And so basically all I just did was just ask MetaMask, hey, what's your address? And as you can see, it pulled this in. So this is a test account 94D, and it's the same value that's here, 67B1, 67B1. You generally want to be very careful about ensuring that you have the addresses that you have when you're in a production environment, when you're on the main net. So it's really good to get used to learning how to see these addresses, learning how to validate that they're actually the address that's yours and that you're working with, and start to get used to thinking about smart contract addresses as large hexadecimal addresses, and being owners of those things. So that's part of our process. Is we want you to start to get to think about what that's all about. So I pull in my Ethereum address, and this is my, I've grabbed that into this client. Now, one of the cool things is us at Unitegrity, we don't know actually anything about this address. This isn't being stored at Unitegrity. This is just stored on my computer. So my computer has a plugin, and my computer asks my plugin for my address. This doesn't get sent to Unitegrity. It's not recorded anywhere. It's just my address. And so there's no actual record tied to who I am by Unitegrity in any way. And we at Unitegrity don't want to know who you are. We don't care. We want to keep your data as far away from us as possible. We aren't interested in that. We want you to be responsible for your own data. We're interested in aggregates of data, and we like knowing how people do things and how people act and how the world works. But we don't actually want to know who you are. So, and we're going to go to great lengths to make sure that we never know who you are, because we actually believe that that's the whole point. You should protect your privacy, and you should be very careful about your privacy, and you should take an active role in protecting your own privacy. And so that's obviously what we preach. That's obviously what we're trying to do as well. All right, so let's go ahead and create a Unitegrity token. So we hop in here to create a Unitegrity token, and that's obviously working really quick. I'm not sure why it didn't work, because my internet broke. Oh, there we go. Just in time. Came back. Well, that's the magic of the internet, right? So just as I'm recording this, I'm doing a live demo. I'm showing you on our live site, and that's what they always say, don't ever do that. And for a few seconds there, for some reason, now I lost my internet and can't interact with the mainnet.